Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome to FOA Live. I am Jennifer Katrulya, co-president of FOA, and as always, joined by Rush Olney, the other co-president of FOA. Rush, happy Monday. Great to see you.
Happy Monday to you, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I'll let Jennifer introduce the show, but say it's a hot topic.
Great to be on with everybody today, and certainly if you are joining us, welcome having you comment in, and we'll do a shout out and say hello to you. It was wonderful to see, for those of you in Kansas City, we obviously got together with a number of you last Thursday, and so it was a great set of conversations. I know really positive takeaways. Thank you again. Some of you traveled in to join us and really had a great time. I will say, for those of you who have met our Board of Advisors member and long tenured FOA member, Miles Spencer, Miles and Rush were able to have a little follow-up heated competitive game of pickleball on Friday. And so that'll be a great continued rivalry until we get to our fall summit in October. So it was a good way to set the stage for you guys have been at it since what, 2 years ago now, or a year and a half ago in Scottsdale? Yeah, a couple of years. So I think we'll start to have just exhibition ones for you and Miles exhibition games. But thank you again to everybody who joined up. Today, what I thought I'd talk about is Rush and I are spending a number of meetings and conversations with clients, contact friends in the crypto blockchain space, and Rush has been a long time participant and fan of this space. I am coming to it as a novice. I've skirted it for a long time, but it's becoming a bigger part of my world. So what we thought we would do is really dive into it today as a topic, but in a 101 capacity. What you're going to find over the next several months is that we are going to be building out. We've talked on prior shows about our different levels of participation and membership in FOA, which include our family offices, of course, and then our On the Rise community for those who are accumulating significant wealth, and for those who are having trigger events, whether you're an executive in a company or a professional athlete, whatever your stage in life, that part of our community. Obviously the conversations are a little bit different, and we want to make sure we're giving you what you need in your space. And then our third really is our innovator community. And of course, many of you as our family office members and community have innovative efforts you're a part of or you're supporting. And it's also a great meeting place for people who are doing game-changing things and who want to connect with our families. But in any case, topics like this and how they're relevant and how people are involving themselves really differs, but with the same topic in mind. And one of the things that prompted this is we've been talking about technology in the space when it comes to accounting for cryptocurrency, some of the newer announced tax changes that are coming down the line in 25 and 6. So with that, I will also mention our forever comment about how anything we talk about on this show today is for informational purposes only. It is meant to be general, especially today is meant to be more the 101, and we'll build on it in more advanced conversations on future calls, which for sure will involve Rush and a guest. And I'll have the pleasure of just fireside chatting as a moderator. But as we do this again is for informational purposes only. Happy to share content with you. Before you make any decisions, please see your own advisors, as they are most familiar with your specific situation. So with that, Rush, this is an especially good time for me to point that out, because we are in a great space. We've mentioned a number of times before, and Gary Cardone has been on our show. I would say that he's been very generous, so we've spent some time with him, and he'll be speaking at the October conference. The two of you, as you get deep in conversations, and of course Scott Lippert, if you happen to be on or listening, and a family of you that we have as part of FOA. I quickly just listen and observe, but this would be a good time for us to talk about, as everyone gets into the conversations about Web3 versus blockchain, crypto, the different terminology. For those who, again, as family offices, we're hearing more and more people kind of want to dabble in the space. But I shared with you before, and I was very transparent about, I don't, in some respects, when people talk about mining for this, I'm like, okay, is there a backhoe actually involved? Are we actually like digging? Because you talk about it being a dirty thing to create. What does that mean? All the different terms that go into this. What sits in a box versus what is digital, and what do all these things mean? So maybe you could give us a quick rundown and just set the stage for everybody.
Sure. Yeah, we'll go through some, as you stated, 101 terms today. Blockchain, Web3, and then everybody's, I'm sure, excited about the changes and the tax code revolving around crypto. And luckily we've had conversations with some people that are helping put solutions together for that and building businesses around those that reporting. So I guess we'll start with blockchain. So blockchain, excuse me, is a type of database, um, and the information gets stored in blocks, and those blocks get chained together. And once the blocks are filled and they get chained together, it goes into what's called a ledger, and that ledger basically gives real time, infallible transaction history of anything that happened on that specific blockchain. And understand that blockchain is somewhat generic, but blockchain is the technology. And if you want to think about different types of blockchains, which are represented by Bitcoin, Ether, or Ethereum, those have their own protocols, and so their blockchains don't interact. So Ethereum's blockchain is point by point, infallible, just as Bitcoin's is, and any of the other blockchain projects that are typically represented by a cryptocurrency.
So Rush, thank you very, very much for sharing about each of those. And obviously, again, for many of us, it's still a process of walking through. So with your help, actually, what I thought about, Rush and I do pre-plan for these shows. And one of the things we didn't talk about is, I think, through the member website, and we'll share these out. But maybe we can diagram some of this for everybody and kind of make it a little bit easier to walk through the various terms in a visual way. No backhoes for everybody, I promise. So we've covered that. But as we walk through this a little bit further and just talk about the practical implications. So in what way, for example, can blockchain be useful? What's an example of where you could actually see that and experience it?
So the benefit of blockchain is that it can be used in several different businesses, or as the backbone, the technology backbone for several businesses. There's supply chain. There's also just e-commerce as a whole, and so e-commerce is a behemoth of business these days, and the original internet was a message vehicle exclusively. And what they had done is they'd kind of Legoed pieces on to deal with security, secure transactions, transfer of money, pretty much anything other than transfer of information and messages. Everything else had to be kind of taped on and duct taped on. And obviously, that industry has grown significantly. However, it is held together by duct tape, whereas blockchain as the backbone for Web3, as the technological backbone for it, it addresses all the shortcomings of Web 1 and sort of the email approach to the internet. And so it's, if you think about it in that sense, all the add-ons, the McAfee securities, and the all these different things that get thrown on there, all the things that banks do, and wiring money and everything, all of that is housed in a blockchain project or in blockchain. So you can see pretty quickly how replacing all of these one-off technologies that had been put on top of Web 1, how much better and more efficient that is.
So, Rush, when we talk about this too, you and I have been in a few situations, and certainly it's a popular conversation, but how all of this can even be used in a medical setting. So we've talked about it in terms of the communication and ownership, really, of patient records and other things like that. So if we were to share 3 or 4 places where maybe over the next 5-10 years, people could expect to see this, what are some of the top, I always like to throw things in there just so everybody knows that we didn't talk about before the show, but I know he knows this. So Rush, if you don't mind sharing with everybody, maybe we can walk through a few examples.
There's, for people familiar or unfamiliar, typically what you receive is, or what you use to store off your digital assets and your cryptocurrencies is a wallet. And we'd worked on a blockchain medical solution, and what we had suggested was walletizing each person and allowing them to store off and really own all their medical data in a wallet, which then they control who gets access to. And 2 things on that. One, very readily available in your smartphone, or just, people aren't making phone calls, sending faxes. It's just a very,
still getting a CD. I know I had to go through that recently.
Yeah, it's
Like,
a very clean approach.
I don't know where I'm going to put it, but yeah.
Yeah, very clean approach to what is very important information. Hopefully nobody needs it at the drop of a hat, but obviously if there is an emergency, getting people's medical records to EMT and medical staff is vitally important. So that's one application. Smart contracts is another application. And what smart contracts will enable people to do is to reduce the friction and cost of intermediaries. And one example that I've kind of thrown out, and I'll say it's not the most in vogue of examples, but a smart contract can represent any non-fungible asset, which means things like houses and art. And what I think, my own opinion, in the future will be is a lot of intermediaries who are commission based in the sale of something or the representation of something, you'll be able to house that in your wallet with a smart contract that's legally binding, and those transactions and sales can move peer to peer, as opposed to peer to business to business to business to peer, which takes a lot of friction, a lot of cost, and a lot of opportunity for mistakes out of the equation.
Well, and Jordan, you point out, so Jordan Grimes, welcome, and great to see you today. And you mentioned the idea of creating self-executing wills. So yeah, so I think that, the implications are widespread. And so among the other things, Rush, you and I talked about, I was asking you is when we have been part of conversations about energy transfer and where something like this can come in, how are we seeing things like that work? How are people monetizing that process?
On energy transfer?
Yes.
So one of the or a knock on blockchain technology, specifically mining, which is mining ends up being kind of the workhorse of any blockchain. It's all the computational power that supports that technology, is that it's very energy dense and takes a significant amount of energy to continue to operate that. And if there's a problem that you can monetize, people typically find a way to get out in front of that. And so what a lot of Bitcoin miners have done is they've gone to the source of renewables mostly, and have struck deals to take excess energy that would never reach an end user, a home, a business, an electric car, and they've contracted with that renewable group to purchase that and to consume that energy that really would have been lost in dissipation by having to transfer too far, or it just wouldn't be cost effective due to the distance that they would have to move that energy. So they're one of the largest consumers of renewable energy, albeit they are very energy. They do use a lot of energy, but they've found ways to kind of mitigate what that impact would be, and to take on and form relationships to take excess energy off the grid that would have just not been used.
Awesome. And Rush, thank you very much. So as we talk about this and take things kind of a step further, one of the things that's at least seemed true over the years is that cryptocurrency has been one of the areas where people could shift money, and I'm going to say this loosely, in a way that was a little bit off the radar, right? It's been a way to kind of move some assets, and there are a number of categories that factors into. So again, we're going to keep this at a 101 level, but it was also considered a way that really, from a taxing perspective, really nobody quite figured out how to make that work yet. And so we've seen the IRS struggle with that over the last number of years. And most recently, what we see coming down the pipe is where, first of all, just to remind everybody that at least today, cryptocurrency is viewed really as property versus a currency. And so very much like your other investment assets. And so when you're looking at the potential tax implications of this, and when you're selling it, it is, taxable or will on the gain, and you're tracking your gains and losses in your basis. And so over the course of the next couple of years, actually in 2026, reporting for 2025, the IRS really is going to be tightening up on the reporting of cryptocurrency transactions for the purpose of 1099 reporting. And obviously then making it a lot easier to track that through to the filing of tax returns, but also creating, headaches and challenges. And among those, at least today, again, the way that the news is coming out, and things are always subject to change, but that on the 1099s, not only will you be asked to report the revenue or the sales from those transactions, but also to actually report the basis. And so if you're not actually tracking that for each transaction you make, and when you think about how granular this is, you can do, certainly people think of larger transactions and intentional investment moves, but you can pay for your delivery dinner in crypto. So and at the point that you're selling crypto essentially to pay for something in dollars, you are creating a transaction. And so being able to track the cost basis, the basis of that individual transaction is something people are really going to need to get ahead of, because depending on the solutions you're using and how you're actually facilitating that movement, that's going to need to end up on your 1099. And in the event that you don't have your basis, there actually can be situations where that's reported as zero. And then until you're able to establish otherwise, you are taxed or taxable. You have a taxable transaction on that entire movement of your crypto. And so, Rush, again, I know now we're getting obviously into more detailed tax conversations, which certainly we have readily available a number of our extended friend and tax professionals who can comment on all of this. But I think the big picture is that this can create sort of an end to the Wild West of crypto, and create a situation where people are needing to do actual investment planning and tax planning, because depending on the nature of the transaction, how long the crypto was held, number of other things, at least from what I've been reading, this can actually fall into the 23% tax bracket. It can be a meaningful hit that people, again, might have thought was a little bit of creative route up till this point. Any thoughts on that?
There were some interesting approaches with people moving money, if you will, out of the cryptocurrencies into NFTs, which is another part of the blockchain world, and Web3 is the non-fungible tokens. But it was call it 2016 to 2020, where NFTs had just a hellacious run. And what was driving that were people not wanting to cash out of their crypto, but they were wanting to diversify. And so you saw just a large number of NFTs, early adapters to the NFT market, getting a windfall because people were wanting to diversify out of a single cryptocurrency, and NFTs were a way not to take that off the blockchain, and have, call it a liquidity event or a sale. It was more of a transfer. But I'm sure the IRS, once they kick this into gear, will not fall for that ruse.
So, well, and Rush, so thank you very much for sharing in each of those areas. I think that as we walk through it, the bottom line in this is that as we get into discussions about wallets and NFTs and really the progression through this, for those who are curious, you also want to be careful. I am definitely someone who gets curious about something, and I can go down a rabbit hole on trying to explore it. And so I kid you not, we try to be pretty transparent on this show, that there was a day where I sent Rush a series of text messages saying, I think I created like 7 wallets today in my effort to create an NFT. And I realized after having, when you sign up for these wallets, you are sharing a certain amount of information in order to establish them. And so there are definitely far better ways to do that, but also ways to walk through this lesson. So I would think, Rush, one of the things I'm actually thinking, and I'm going to offer them up, but in the community that we have here, for those who are pretty new to it, especially as we look at Fall Summit, this may be a great workshop opportunity. But the point is that as you're learning these different areas, understanding the difference, and especially, again, as you start to get into the tax implications, one of the things that, at least for me, I worry about based on what I see with clients is those who say, okay, this crypto thing, I want to start to play with it. I want to start to just get in on the game, but in small amounts. And you suddenly, start to realize that in the course of the year, as you start to play with transactions and you start to do some other things, if you are not also aware of the, again, pending tax changes and other implications of what you're doing, you can start to create liabilities and issues for yourself that weren't on your radar, that you're not planning. So regardless of your expertise or involvement in it to date, you're going to continue to hear about it. You're going to hear about it more. And honestly, one of the things I think about is with the increased conversation, people become more comfortable with something as you just hear about it more, and as it becomes more of a tool. And I think, again, for individuals like myself who may have kind of pushed it off for a while, as you start to experiment with it, people also get comfortable kind of jumping into something when they're hearing about it more. So from what you're seeing as someone who is more experienced with it, are you seeing more people just jump in? And what are you seeing go wrong other than my story?
I mean, the obvious thing would be just mass fraud, Sam Bankman-Fried and other exchanges that were just, a lot of them, it's weird, it's like less fraud and more just no business acumen, no real plan for the growth that they had. A lot of people that had wild success in this were starting businesses off, or not even businesses. They were just playing in the space, and ended up in a position that maybe they shouldn't have been in. The other thing is, the first year that I received, and this is a personal was a personal issue, but the first year I received tax documentation from exchanges that I had transactions on, one of the exchanges sent me a taxable income, or a taxable number based on my total trading volume, notional trading volume, which I wasn't day trading, but I was playing around enough to where that number dwarfed any of my holdings, because every time I was in and out, it was just aggregating these numbers. And then it got very strange if I were selling on one exchange more than I was buying. So I'd have, and then netting them out off exchange. It really, it was a real interesting conversation with my accountant, and then them trying to relay that to whoever at the IRS. I don't think anybody believed me, but we got through it. So
so I mean, but these are real stories, right? For families. Again, certainly if we're dealing with our family office communities and we see an increased number of families decide to dabble in this, whether you're a current generation leader or you're a rising or new leader, the dollars you can be talking about here are significant depending on how you decide to jump in and play. And so, but also let's take it, and for our On the Rise members, of course, as well, on the innovator side, as you're playing in this space, this also requires that you really are in touch with, if you're creating tech that's in this space, if you are, working with customers or clients, et cetera, who are going to be using the solutions you're creating, you now do have a responsibility, if not an obligation, to point out that these are some of the potential implications or risks or education points associated with using the things you're bringing to market. And so there really is an expanded loop of things that people need to be thinking about when they're jumping into the space, and it makes the education and development that much more important. So we, again, will be building on this. We have, this again really was me bringing to the forefront my being new, very transparently, and enjoying the learning process from Rush and the others in our community, we do have a number of people in our space who are at the top end of the experts and thought leaders in this field. So we look forward to sharing them with you and building on this conversation today and deeper diving. So for all of you who joined us today, thank you very, very much. Really, really appreciate it. Rush, thank you. I know on many of our shows, I jump in there and I love kind of running with a number of things, and you're always so generous with your time and sharing, and so really appreciate you bringing so much to the show today and your thought leadership, and we don't necessarily hear from you enough, so look forward to it. Rush loves being in the hot seat, for those of you who know him. So thank you for today, really appreciate it. And for all of you, we will see you next week.
Thanks everybody, have a great week.
Take care.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you. Bye.